Welcome into the preview and prediction show for the Florida Gators matchup with the Georgia Bulldogs in Jacksonville, Florida on Saturday. I'm Brandon Carroll, the host here at CARROLL'S Cadence, and I'm joined today by a special guest. If it wasn't for this man on the other side of the screen, the 585 of y'all who are subscribed to CARROLL'S Cadence wouldn't even be here. Because, and if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do that. If you're watching right now, I just want to get that out there. Like this video, comment down below. We're not going to have time for all that in a minute, but here's the guy who inspired me to get this thing going and kind of guided me to step out of my comfort zone and get the on-air camera thing moving. All right. The man behind the Film Guy Network and the lead editor at Dawgs Daily SI. Here to bring an inside look at the Gators opponent in Week 9, Mr. Brooks Austin. How you doing, Brooks?
I'm doing good, Brandon. Yeah, no, I think I told you out in LA. I do believe. And one thing this Michigan story has told me is that, golly, people really hate reading. Like, all you got to do is really read up on what's going on in Michigan to realize, oh, that's not side stealing, that's cheating. You know what I mean? Like, if you just read a couple of reports on what's going on up there, it's like, oh no, they doing some dog stuff up there, some downright dirty shit. But no, one thing it's taught me is that people are not reading, and if people are not reading, they must be doing something else because they're damn sure not working. They're watching, right? People are watching nowadays. And if you're a media personality or if you're a reporter nowadays and you're not comfortable on camera, you better start getting comfortable on camera, in my opinion. I just think that's where it's going, honestly.
Yeah, I remember you telling me I got to come on your show out in LA and you were like, dude, like, you're a cool dude in person, but when you get in front of that camera, you freeze up and you are not the same person. We need you to get it together. And I don't know why, but that just kind of resonated with me. I said, you know what? I do need to get it together because I'm freaking cool. All right. So I'm gonna treat myself as if I'm cool. I'm gonna make my own show and just get this thing moving. So the Florida Georgia matchup historically is one of the greatest rivalries in college football. It is filled with history, filled with just a ton of close games and things like that. But over the past few years, it just really hasn't been that, for especially with Georgia being a two-time reigning national champion. They've proven to be the better squad, and Florida is seeming as if they're kind of swinging the pendulum a little bit in terms of kind of going on an upward trend, but it still is. There's a lot of question marks regarding the Florida squad, whereas Georgia's rolling once again. One thing we do here on CARROLL'S Cadence is we kind of look at both the offense and defense philosophies from the team that Florida's playing to try to give our subscribers and our viewers an opportunity to understand what Florida matches up against. So can you kind of break down what this offense has looked like in 2023 under Mike Bobo and kind of things that he's done differently from Todd Monken to shift what Florida or Georgia does on that side of the football?
Yeah, man. So I think when you look at them offensively, I mean, if you just look at the years that they were as an offense under Todd Monken, I know that's the big change, right? Monken to Bobo. There was a lot of talk this offseason about how formationally and ideologically and just how they talk and how they use concepts, they weren't really going to change as an identity. And you saw that through the first 6 or 7 football games, with Brock Bowers being kind of the feature of this 12 personnel, bunching and grouping offense that they've been using the last 3 years under Monken, and Bobo was doing the same thing. The only additions that I think that he had made, and they were solid additions to this offense, the motioning packages was a lot better. I think if you watch them through the first 7 games, there was a lot of times where even on like social media, people were like, particularly that Auburn game, Georgia's got to score in the fourth quarter, and all of a sudden, like, Brock Bowers is wide open, and people are like, how does that happen? How is Brock Bowers that open? Well, conceptually, it was designed really, really well to beat that specific coverage that Auburn had been playing. They were playing a lot of cover 2, and Mike Bobo threw a specific beater at them for that specific spot. So I thought he was doing a really, really good job, but not necessarily changing or developing on, but just adding on little wrinkles into the offense that was already kind of created and allowing Carson Beck to be comfortable in an offense that he was already in. Now, what are they going to look like now is the biggest question to me. I mean, how much different are they going to become without Bowers? I think that's what you really want to know as a football analyst and a football observer. What do they become now? Because I would imagine they're no longer a 12 personnel football team. They really only have 2 healthy tight ends on scholarship going into this football game. It's Oscar Delp and it's Lawson Lucky, a sophomore and a true freshman, and the other true freshman scholarship tight end, Pierce Spurlin, has a broken hand going into this football game is what it sounds like. So they're not going to be, I would imagine, a 12 personnel team. You're going to see a lot more 11 personnel from an identity standpoint. Defensively, Florida fans listen to this will recognize everything that they do pretty much. They're a 4-2-5 mid-front defense. That famous clip that Austin Armstrong went viral for this past offseason, we want to be a 4-2-5 split safety defense, yada, yada, yada. He just rat-tat-tatting all these little ideologies about what he wants to be defensively. Well, all he did was rattle through basically everything that Georgia is and has been over the years since they kind of gone to this mid-front defense, which is something they really started to heavily feature in that 2018 season. And by 2021 rolled around, they had pretty much perfected it. And they're not as flashy and is not as, high-end talented as they were in years past, particularly on the interior of the defensive line. But I think it gets overanalyzed about, Georgia's not what they were. They're still really, really solid defensively. I think they're still the number one team in the SEC in yards allowed per game and rushing yards allowed per game the last time I checked. So still really solid.
Yeah, respectfully, if you're arguably the best college football defense of all time, I don't think that standard is going to maintain each and every year.
Yeah.
But it's still really good. All right. So I've definitely seen the same thing. Just kind of staying on the offense a little bit with having a guy like Brock Bowers go down and just being the game breaker that he is. I think you might have talked about it before and how the difference between Todd Monken and Mike Bobo specifically is that Todd Monken's background comes from the NFL, where a lot of the time it's all you're game planning each and every week for the opponent. Whereas in college, it's more so trying to get those dudes that can tote the rock open or, in space and being able to make plays. With Bobo not being a week-to-week guy, not saying he doesn't do that, but it's just not the necessary style of college coordinators. How do you see him making adjustments for Brock Bowers and kind of still staying within that mold of sorts and not necessarily changing it for Florida and for the rest of the schedule?
Yeah, just to continue the idea of the difference between the NFL and the college in terms of coordinating. In the NFL, the talent gap, it drastically shrinks, right? Obviously. Yeah. So Brock Bowers is not going to be incrementally better than everybody else on the football field in the NFL. He'll just be one of the many great football players on the field in the NFL. So when he's in college, you want to give him more touches. You want to design more offense around that type of football player than you historically would in the NFL because of what I just talked about. So you are 100% correct in that. Now, as far as how do they go about replacing all that stuff? And I think you and I talked about this last night on our show. It's about getting it from everybody. Kirby said it the best. Kirby said, Superman is dead. He is not real. That's what he said. You can't go out there. You can't be Superman. You can't go out there and try to do everything that it is that Brock Bowers was doing. You're going to have to go out there and get it from a multitude of places. Now, speaking specifically to Bobo and what he will ultimately, I think, result to in situations like this, he'll just lean on his next best player, right? Who is my next guy that I can lean on consistently and know is going to be an answer? And to me, in a football game like this, is Daijun Edwards. It's their next main constant. They're two constants, three. I think Carson Beck's played at an exceptionally high level in terms of just decision-making. You say what you want about whether or not he's a flash player. I don't think he's a flash player. I don't think you'll watch Carson do things on film and you'll be like, my God, that guy sure is talented. No, most of what you'll say when you watch him is damn, man, no, he's seeing it really well. He knows what he's looking at. He's making right decisions and just processing the position correctly. So he's a constant, and Daijun Edwards is a constant. I would imagine those two known factors will be heavily featured in this football game for Georgia.
Without a doubt, and especially with Daijun Edwards and against a Florida run defense that, we talked about on the show last night, has been so up and down because of the inability to execute run fits at a consistent basis and things like that. So I definitely understand that aspect of things. And then you look at Carson Beck, all right, and you look at just him stepping into this role this season after Stetson Bennett kind of elevated his game to heights unforeseen from a lot of people in those two championship runs. How have you seen him progress from week 1 to now week 8? And what is he week 9? Yeah. How have you seen him progress in that time and kind of start to, because I know you say he's a great processor. He's great operating, but he's also great at doing the little things in film study to process what's going on in the field in real time. So how has he shown you that through the first 8 games that they played?
Yeah, I think it was the Kentucky game. I think maybe midway through the third quarter. I think they're already up 28 points or something like that. And he throws a pick. I think it was his second or third pick of the season. But it was his first oh, you were trying something. You were out here trying to make a confidence throw, I'm gonna F around and find out type of throw. That to me was the last okay, no, he's playing confident. I never thought he was ever going to be an electric mover, electric athlete with his legs. He's been serviceable. He does enough. He does that very similar. I would even say Graham Mertz climbs through pockets slightly better than Carson does at this point in his career, just because Graham's seen more dirty pockets, right?
Yeah.
So
he saw a lot of them at Wisconsin.
Yeah, exactly. And also did a lot of, damn, I thought I took a 7-step drop off heavy play action. Why are people in my face already? Yeah, no, I did a lot of that. Yeah, so it has a big history with it. But the last couple of things I needed to see from Carson, because I knew, man, if he's from the Jacksonville area, anybody who's ever seen this dude throw a football, bro, this guy's got one of them. He's got one of them arms. He really does. So anybody's ever seen him throw it knew it wasn't about that. It was going to be about, hey, can he put it all together? Can he play confidently? And if things don't look great, can he shake those off? I think that Auburn performance was really, really important, not only for him, but for his teammates too. Man, look, the people in the building, you know how it is. You've been around football long enough. If the quarterback is really, really monotone, if the quarterback is one of these guys who's not super outgoing, I think Florida fans are going to find a little bit of DJ Lagway strikes me as one of these introverts, not really super energetic, not going to be over jumping up, spiking footballs after touchdowns, just going to hand the ball to the ref and walk off to the sideline type guy. These types of football players, everyone talks about how cool and calm and collected they are when they're performing well. When they don't look good, when it looks bad, everybody's like, well, that guy's body language is terrible. That guy doesn't care. That guy this, that guy that. I was worried for that. I was worried whether or not that was going to be an issue. And early on in his career, it was. There was a play in Carson's career where he threw a pick 6 against UAB, and he doesn't sprint after the guy to make a tackle. And Georgia fans crucified him, called him a quitter, said he was lazy, said he wasn't ready for the job. And then next thing you know, 2.5 years later, 24 months later, he throws a pick against Vandy and damn near kills the guy 2 weeks ago. It saves a pick 6. So I think there's been some progression in the athlete as just he's become more confident in himself. But all the other things that make him great, his ability to decipher information, his ability to throw on time and play within his mechanics. I kind of knew all of those things were going to happen. I just didn't know for a fact they were going to happen, because how would you?
Yeah, definitely. And just having the ability for him to make that jump speaks to the development that's going on at Georgia right now. Yes, they're getting this talent in and they've got abundance of it, but it don't mean nothing when you arrive at the college level. So just the ability to kind of curate these guys into being the studs
do it
that they
in the
are.
Shadows too, man. Do it in practice at a position where man, you develop a defensive tackle by doing it the way Florida's doing it right now. I think one thing Billy's done exceptional job of is playing young guys. When I turn tape on the last 2 years, very few programs are playing more football players than Florida right now. They're cycling through them. Why? Because they need guys to get reps. But the quarterback position is unlike anything else in this sport. It's very similar to a place kicking job. We don't know. We don't get an opportunity to see the two until the game is out of hand or the situation's out of hand, and then he goes in there and just hands the ball off. Everything else about the evaluation of who our starter is and what guy we've gone and chose to go with, all that's done behind closed doors, and we don't know shit about it as a public, audience. So, yeah, man, for him to have developed over these last 3.5 years into somebody who can walk in year one as a starter and complete 73% of his balls and be 4th in the nation in passing yardage. Yeah, it says a lot about a development at a position that, man, we talked about it again last night on our show. This is a program that did not win football games under Kirby Smart if their quarterback threw it for more than 30 times just 3 years ago. just 3 years ago, this was one of these offenses that everybody was like, oh, well, they game manage and they play on defense. They can't throw the ball. Well, now they're a pass-led offense. That's nuts.
Yeah, without a doubt. And just seeing how they've progressed at Georgia. I know, you cover Georgia, but you're all over the place. Like you take a look at the national scale. All right.
Yeah.
And one thing that you kind of take pride in is your ability to evaluate and even develop, because you're a quarterback coach, or you coach quarterbacks on the side, whatever.
Yeah.
Just what have you seen from when you've watched Graham Mertz, and what's your overall impressions of him and his progression since he's arrived at Florida, especially since you've been able to kind of get a more in-depth look at him in preparation for this matchup on Saturday?
So I the number one rule, and that's not the number one rule, but one of the main like criteria of quarterback play is protection of the football. Like you're put in responsible, like it's your job. Hey, here's our baby. Don't go give it to the opposition. So I didn't really. I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't scout him a bunch at Wisconsin, because if you're creating this many turnovers as a quarterback, I'm not really gonna go deep into it. I'm not gonna find out why. I'm just gonna assume that you're making bad decisions. So I didn't have a bunch of knowledge of him coming into this Florida situation, other than the fact that he has played a lot of turnover-worthy football. Then I turned the tape on, and the first one I watched was the Charlotte game, because I'm like, what? Not like the TV copy. I only watched all 22. I'm like, what's going on right here? And then I watched, and I'm like, oh, damn, that ball's put in the only spot it could be put in. And I'm like, oh, he's got really hectic pockets right now, too. Oh, he stepped in through that one and put that ball in the spot. And like, I'm watching all these things, and I'm like, bro, you can't buy this. Ain't a box score scouter. You can't go watch this guy and just look at his box score and think he's played well or he hasn't played well. This dude's talented. And the other thing that I've noticed about Graham, as the season has progressed, the things I go to look for in quarterback play, I notice are improving. One primary example, pass protection. A lot of people think pass protection is all on the offensive line. That is so far from the truth. So far from the truth. In fact, I would put it almost as much on the shoulders of the quarterback as I would in terms of alignment and assignment as I would the offensive five, like the offensive line as a whole. Who we decide who we're responsible for as an offensive line and as a quarterback, like that's the whole thing. Whether or not we can get the right five guys on their right five guys, that's the whole idea of pass protection, that whole game. It's the whole reason we do blitz pickup. Their ability to pick up pressures throughout the season has drastically increased, and it's because his quarterback play has increased. These last 4 or 5 weeks, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a quarterback in the conference that's hotter, you know what I mean, playing more confident right now than what Graham is.
Yeah, I did a video on Wednesday where I could just dove into Graham, and I watched a lot of tape, but obviously the South Carolina game was where it kind of looked as if he is starting to arrive. That was his big moment. And the biggest thing to me in the shift that we've seen from him this season is he's went from being the guy that they've asked him to be in terms of a game manager. He's able to target the short and intermediate areas. He's able to just lead this offense and play turnover-free football. All right, that's what Florida asked him to do when he came in. But
Go ahead.
I was just saying he's starting to kind of put himself in a position now where he's playing more of the, like, yes, he's still doing all those things, but he's starting to do some of the things that they also want him to be able to do, and being able to take the deep shots, target deep downfield, and make the plays outside of just the comfort zone or the things that they've said, like, yes, if you do these things, like, you're good, but we would like you to take that next step. It seems as if he's starting to take that next step, especially we saw that against South Carolina in week 7.
You know, that South Carolina game wasn't an exceptional performance, but they do an extremely poor job of disguising and changing or making any adjustments. But one thing I will say about Florida's offense as a whole, they're doing a lot of things to help Graham out. Like, there was one very critical third down early in the football game, first half. It's like 3rd and 4 plus territory. Florida goes on to score in the drive. But South Carolina tries to throw a changeup. They've been playing man the whole first half. Yeah. They try to throw a zone coverage, and Billy does a great job. He empties the formation. He takes the running back, runs him out of the formation, and all of a sudden you see the alignment from the defense of South Carolina bump. Everybody bumps instead of one guy traveling all the way out. And Graham immediately knows, okay, well, now I've got zone coverage. All right, so he knows, okay, well, I've got zone coverage. As soon as the ball snaps, let me just get my eyes on this middle linebacker, because he's going to tell me the answer to everything. And that's immediately what happens. They convert the third down. They hit little 89, the tight end, right on a little button hook. He ends up running after the catch for like a 12-yard gain, middle of the field. Like I said, they go on and score a touchdown later on that possession. It's those things that help us as an offense. And again, you don't see those like week 1, week 2, week 3. It's the additions and the full complexity of the offense. Like, you know why now. Like, we know why we are doing what we're doing, not just what to do.
Yeah. And another thing to me specifically and how he's been performing is just, I think it's all tendency and just the willingness, like I said earlier, to expand his horizon and being able to take shots and do things like that. Like you saw it at one point in the first half where they ran a levels concept and a flood to the right, and they had 4 dudes all like up and down it was Trey Wilson at the line of scrimmage, and then you had Hayden Hansen coming on a drag at the 8 to 10 yard mark, Ricky Pearsall over him, and then a deep over from Khalil Jackson. And 9 times out of 10, he's taken Hayden Hansen in this 8 to 10, or he's dumping it down to Trey Wilson because he's on the run outside, but he set his feet and just uncorked one to Khalil Jackson, who went parallel to the ground to come up with it. And it might not have been the best ball placement, but it was something that you say, oh, so he's willing to take deep shots now. Like he's you can tell he's kind of feeling it. And then later in the game, on the game-winning touchdown pass, he gets out there, he does what you said, and he's able to read that defense, and it's helped by how Billy has made it easy on him to do so. And before they even line up to play, he's telling Ricky, hey, go win the game. We're throwing it to you. And so just little things like that to me show that he's progressing, and he gives them the luxury of not just finishing this year, but he could potentially go into next year, give DJ Lagway time to develop, and then be a more than serviceable bridge quarterback before Lagway, who's Billy Napier's guy, gets into the fold.
No, I think that's an important key to the transition, right, into a Lagway, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the perception from an outsider is that Billy Napier's run at Florida kind of depends on what he can do with DJ Lagway. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So you've got all the ability in the world to increase your insurance time on that, if you know what I mean, right? We can push that decision date another year. And again, I do think Graham has played I'm going to say really well. He's played far better than anybody can sit here and say that they thought he was going to. And you have to accredit that to the player, but you certainly have to accredit that to the coaching staff as well. I've been very critical of Billy. I've said he needs to, hire an offensive coordinator, and he needs to figure out special teams and all that. But it boils down to 2 things for me. Can you recruit, and do your players play hard for you? And he does those 2 things really, really well. And eventually over time, I think you'll learn all the other mistakes. Like, you'll be able to learn and grow through all those other things, and you'll become a better football coach. Like Kirby Smart damn near lost to McNeese State year 1. You know what I mean? Like, it was not great. It wasn't always great. There was always times where oh, you're not going to be able to figure it out offensively. Well, it took them 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, but they eventually figured it out. But nowadays in this pressure cooker, college football, transfer portal, everybody can turn it around quickly. Look at Colorado type vibe. I don't think you get 6 or 7 years to figure out offense anymore if you're a defensive coordinator. I don't think you get 6 or 7 years to figure out how to make sure you're not running 10 guys onto the special teams unit. I don't know how long you get anymore to do these types of things. And maybe that's going to be a run, or it's going to decrease the amount of great coaches we have in college football. I don't know. I, as an outsider, think Billy Napier is a really, really good football coach that needs a little help with some game management. And if that's all we got left, damn, y'all gonna be all right. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just on that point, on him kind of being all right. There's a lot of I feel like the fan base is so split on Billy Napier. Just give him a little bit more time. All right. Yeah. I think it's important to understand, yes, the expectations are high at Florida. They are to win national championships, and they should be that because what's happened in the past. But if you've looked at what Billy Napier has inherited and what he got when Dan Mullen left, that is not a national championship roster. And it wasn't even close.
To the studs.
It was a strip it down to the bones and rebuild that thing. And so there is a necessity to kind of let this thing play out, especially if they can stretch it into 2025 and kind of get through the hardest schedule in college football history in 2024 for the Florida Gators.
The Tennessee win and the South Carolina win doesn't get people off his back till 2025. Like those 2 wins alone should tell people, all right, no, you're on the right track.
It's very week to week. Like Tennessee win happened, everybody was like, "Oh, Billy's the guy." Kentucky loss happens, everyone says, "Oh, he's done." All right, and then South Carolina win. Right now, everyone's on a high. All right, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, maybe this thing's gonna work out. We have the number 3 recruiting class, blah blah blah." And then you go and you get wiped by Georgia, and they're all going to be like, "Oh, burn it down, start get a new coach, go hire Dan Lanning, whatever." And it's just going to be
hold on. Florida fans think Dan Lanning would leave Oregon to come to Florida?
Yeah, they want Dan Lanning. That's one of them. There's plenty, but Dan Lanning's the guy. But yeah, so
I'm relatively new, like you said, to the national coverage. But one thing I need to know about fan bases is whether or not they're delusional. And all right, now I know. Like if you I'm sorry, Florida's a great football program. It is, but he's already got a top 5 football program in Oregon, and he's locked into $80 million essentially. Okay, why would he want to come start something over at the third best program, the third best program in the SEC? Right? Right? The third best job in the SEC. I would say Georgia's the best job because you don't have to compete with Florida State and Florida for your premier talent in your premier state. Okay, Alabama is the second best job in the SEC, I would say, because of all of the resources and the willingness to dedicate their lives to football at that university. And then it would be Florida, right?
Yeah.
And then we can make an argument about and those 3 are really, really close. They battle each other. Okay. For all of the things required to be great at football, resources, proximity to talent, all these good things, right? Conference. Okay. All these good things are all relatively similar. And then there's Tennessee and LSU. That's kind of how I view the conference.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. I think that's very accurate. But
so no, Oregon, Dan Lanning, not happening. I don't think. Hot take.
I don't want. That's okay. Let's keep. Some people are going to be in my comments, be like, "We don't want Dan Lanning. What are you talking about?" There is a subsection of people that say if Billy doesn't work out, Dan Lanning is the guy they want to hire. All right, and I don't necessarily think if you want to be wishful thinking, that's a fantastic hire, but it's not happening. But that was kind of my point in saying that there's a lot of wavering going on with the people who are either in or out on Billy Napier.
I think if Billy Napier had 10 wins right now, or like if he finishes the season 10-2, people are gonna compare him to the Dan Lanning track, to be honest with you. They're like he's an offensive version of Dan from personality standpoint when I talk to them. Those are like lifer football guys. The reason they're not great in front of cameras and the reason they're kind of like, low energy foos guys, like fake energy, fake juice guys, is because they don't really want to. They're just football dudes. They just want to sit in the room and talk football. That's all they want to do. And when you get them to do that, they're like really lively individuals. And they're super energetic and they got all this juice. But outside of that, they don't want none of that. It's so results oriented, and that's the nature of the business. I get it. But I see a good coach. That's what I do. I see a good coach that needs a couple of areas of improvement like we all do.
I agree. And all right, so moving on. I know we kind of got into the weeds there a bit, getting into everything.
That's the purpose of a podcast, baby.
I understand. Hey, that's how it goes. But shifting back to this matchup in general, we talked about it on your show last night. Wanted to bring it over here to Carroll's Cadence. Keys to the matchup, just for both teams, and we'll alternate in giving our keys. But what do you think is one thing that Georgia needs to do in order to kind of put Florida down the way it should?
Get off the field early defensively. Everyone wants to talk about Georgia and their slow starts. Man, offensively, I think they've been relatively solid in the first half and pretty solid offensively throughout. I can't remember like a specific point in the game where I thought the opposition had a firm hold on what Georgia was doing offensively. Maybe apart from like the early third quarter in the Vanderbilt game because they were trying to figure out what they were going to do without Bowers. But even that, I don't necessarily know. But I think the key for Georgia offensively is Ra Thomas. I don't know how well versed people are with Ra Thomas, despite the fact that he had like 700 yards in the SEC last year at Mississippi State. Like he was a true number one in an SEC offense that was really, really easy. Like it was really, really easy to understand the terminology of the offense, to understand the assignment and the alignment, right? Or the alignment and the assignment, where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to do at Mississippi State was way easier to understand for Ra Thomas than it was for when he originally got to Georgia. So the very beginning of the year, it was still some like learning curve, still some growth period for Ra. And now I think there's some real like comfortability in what he's doing. And it couldn't really have come at a better time for Georgia, because they're certainly going to need it in a time now where, I don't know, you tell me, like ideally, I think 4-2-5 mid front defenses and defenses that come from backgrounds like Austin Armstrong's do, and even like defenses that come from backgrounds like Georgia's do, in an ideal world, if everything were perfect, they would try to play man coverage every single snap. If they could go out and cover everybody and play a single, like a two deep shell, they would every single snap. And maybe Brock being out makes Florida and Austin Armstrong think like, hey, we can cover these guys. We can't cover these guys for 4 quarters, but we can cover these guys a couple of times when we need to in critical downs. And that means blitzing. So if you're talking about keys to success for Georgia, when that comes, if that comes, because I think the risk taking is going to have to come defensively for Florida here in this football game. When that risk taking comes, you got to be able to stand in there and pick up blitzes, which they've done a really, really good job of this year, because Carson's been able to ID pretty much every pressure they've been getting.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned there that I just want to add on to before I get into my key is with Florida, they do want to play man coverage. They want to play. They said coming into this year they were going to play more press man. I think at times they've tried to go to that, and it's worked on occasion, but it hasn't worked consistently. So they've reverted to a lot of cover 3, which is already his base. It's already Austin Armstrong, what he wants to do. But with the growing, when Florida is able to kind of get this talent in there that they have committed and kind of grow this roster and add more depth, I do think that you're going to see a big split of cover 3 and man coverage against any team that they play, whether it's, a high octane offense or rushing offense. They're going to just try to do that, because that is really where they've kind of set that's their scheme. That's his philosophy. And it is a subsection of what Georgia's taught him. Kirby Smart has taught him.
And ideally in that system, eventually at some point down the road, you recruit well enough, you develop well enough, you teach well enough, where you don't have to run single high defense. You run 2 high defense, because the extra safety in the box is no longer needed, because our 4 down and our 2 linebackers control everything. Florida is not quite there with that yet. I mean, if you just ask their 4 defensive linemen and their 2 linebackers to cover the run game, and that's it, we're never going to help out with a safety right now, it doesn't end well. You know what I mean? Even though it did against Tennessee, that's the tape I can't put out of my mind. I don't get it. And maybe Gainesville is that real. Maybe the Swamp is that big of a deal, because that defense, man, they look great. They look great against Tennessee. They did not look good. They looked great. And then Kentucky, and you're just like, what in the?
Yeah, it's been up and down for sure. A key to the matchup for Florida specifically, in my perspective, is just having an impactful rushing attack. It's hard to run north and south on Georgia, but just finding a formula or an ability to do that in any respect against Georgia kind of is how Florida is built to play. That's their formula for success. It's running the football with Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson, and then supplementing it with the screens out to the boundary with Trey Wilson and a Ricky Pearsall, and just letting guys work in space. It's so important for them to do that against a Georgia football team, or if you try to run it down their throats, they're going to let you get a yard. It's going to be 4th and 9, your punt, because that's not how they play football. They're not going to necessarily push you back, but they're going to stop you at the line of scrimmage every single time. And so I think, and not saying they can't, I just think that's the philosophy and what I've seen from Georgia. So having the ability to have an impactful rushing attack and also supplement that with the supplemental rushing game outside is uber important for the Gators if they want to contend in this game, in which will likely be a game where points are going to be scored by Georgia, at least.
Let me ask you this. Is there any aspect of Florida's offense that can add in a quarterback run game at all?
I mean, they could look to Max Brown, but he hasn't played a lot.
All right, so no. If it's this is what I've found, Tim. You hit it. You're 100% right. And Florida, again, based off the ideologies, wants to be this too. You don't run north and south against Georgia. You kind of have to bounce. Auburn's the team this year that everybody points to and says, "Hey, Auburn ran the ball on them." Well, Auburn did, but Auburn sacrificed a whole hell of a lot of the rest of their game plan just to attempt to run the ball. Meaning, like the most successful plays that they had, they were in 13 personnel. They had a design like running quarterback on the field, and they were just basically running 2023 Wildcat. And like, look, dude, if you want to do that, you might be able to rush for 4 yards a carry. But are you going to do that for 4 quarters and win? No, hell no, absolutely not. Like, you're not gonna. So you don't have to give him 12, 15 touches, but like converting first downs in this football game, if you convert 3 or 4 of them with your legs, you have tilted the scales on this football game, not dramatically, but enough. And we need one of those scale tilts, and we need some turnover scale tilts, and we need some red zone efficiency scale tilts, right? That's how you overcome 14.5-point dogs. Like, that's how you do those things on the, in a situation where you're playing the number 1 team in the country and you're not necessarily as talented or as experienced as them.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into my second point for keys to the matchup is turnover-free football. And we've hit on it. That's what Graham Mertz has done very well this year compared to years past. He hasn't turned over the football. And if you can get him to play smart, and it's hard to do against a Georgia defense where they got dudes all over the field and they have Malachi Starks playing sideline to sideline and potentially popping up out of nowhere to snag one, it's becomes just drastically more difficult. But if they're able to stay in that zone to where they don't turn over the football, and if every drive's ending with the kick, they are in a great spot to potentially at least contend with Georgia. Not necessarily beat them or come close to beating them, but contend for a good 3.5 quarters.
Yeah. No, I mean, the turnovers are always the keys, right?
Yeah.
And one thing Georgia's like not necessarily not been able to do, but like the turnover margin isn't drastically in the favor of Georgia. They've protected the football pretty well on the offense side of the football. I only remember like a fumble from Carson. Then I think he's got 3 or 4 picks on the year, and then like maybe another fumble offensively from Oscar Delp, but that's like it. So they're not turning it over a bunch offensively, but defensively, apart from Tyke Smith and I think Malachi Starks has 1 interception, they're not really turning them over drastically on the defensive side of the football. So this is one of those teams where if you can steal 2 possessions, odds are they're not going to manufacture an ability to score, steal 2 possessions from you. So yeah, you can tilt the turnover margin scale pretty quickly on Georgia this year. But I've always found turnover margins, unless you're the New England Patriots, to be pretty up and down. Like they're really, really up and down, unless you have I know why New England's like that. And I think over time they'll come back to the median here. It's because they had such great quarterback play for all those years. Of course they're winning the turnover margin. The some bitches never turning it over. You know what I mean? Like, of course. So it made sense to me. And I think that's the same thing offensively for Georgia right now. The quarterback does not make a lot of throws where you're like, oh, he clearly did not see that. Like Stetson 3 or 4 times a game, Stetson Bennett would do something where the whole Georgia fan base was like, get him out. He is going to lose us this game. Like all the way up until they're up 45 points in the national title game the second time. You know what I mean? Like it was nuts.
Yeah. I think just it's against a defense like Georgia, even though it hasn't necessarily happened this year. And I know it's a cliche, turnover-free football, but it's just opportunities are going to be limited to score. So if you got one, can't give it away. Every opportunity counts. Every possession counts. And it's such a cliche, but it's so true. And especially it's magnified against a Georgia team. And finally, I think that it is the most important thing on the planet for Florida to make tackles on the first attempt. I think this is without question the number 1 key to this contest, because historically we know how this contest is going to roll, or at least how it's rolled in the past. The team who wins in the trenches and on the ground is going to win the game. And that's usually how it shakes out. So I think if Florida is able to execute its run fits and bring down Dejon Edwards, on first contact and his counterparts, it's easier said than done, but that's what Florida needs to focus on. And I know you've kind of had a little one of Florida's edge rushers here, and Princely Umamielen, come at you on Twitter a little bit for kind of pointing out the fact that his run fits might not be up to par with where they need to be to allow this team to execute in doing so. Can you give us a little update on that and how that, just what he said and kind of give your side to that?
I mean, he's right. He is right. All right. Here's what I mean by that. Like, my job, it's not my job. I'm not tasked to do this. I choose to do this because people want to know more and more about football, but it's an impossible job. No different than grading football players as PFF is an impossible job because I'm not in the room. All I see is a defensive end jumping from C gap to B gap and completely getting washed down inside while doing so. Okay. Yeah, very well so could be a run game stunt that I'm unprivy to, right? I don't necessarily get the call, and it might not look like a run game stunt because the run game stunt was not executed properly because his teammate might have left him out to dry, or maybe it wasn't coached properly or whatever it is. That's what makes my job really, really hard. And again, he is right. He is right in the sense that I'm just some Twitter coach talking shit. Well, in a sense, but the reality of the situation is Florida, I think has been very, very up and down in the run game in terms of defensive ability to stop the run because of issues like what I pointed out in that video. Whether or not it was Princely's issue, or whether or not it was the linebackers issue, or whether or not it was the corners issue, the nickel defenders issue, whoever's issue it was, somebody is not fitting the run fit properly. And if I'm not in the room to know what the actually run game call is, guess what? I'll never be able to get it scored properly. I'll never be able to get it evaluated properly. But that doesn't remove the fact that it was not defended properly. You know what I mean? So, like, the point still remains, but Princely, rightfully so, took offense to me kind of taking a stab at his play because he's sitting there going, well, it ain't my fault. It's his fault. Well, maybe we should be taking that to Twitter. And I think that's what Florida wrote, what people told him in his replies. But he is 100% right. I'm just some Twitter guy that didn't have access to 100% of the information. But that doesn't mean I can't sit here and be critical of the performance, because the reality is they gave up a 25-yard explosive run on that play because the run fit wasn't proper. Whoever effed it up, somebody effed it up. And that's all I was pointing out.
Yeah, and they did so against an offense that it was the worst rushing offense in the SEC heading into that contest, and that what's got them sparked to make it a 41-39 final. So there's definitely a back and forth there, but I do think that just being able to do that at a high level again is another thing that's just magnified against Georgia, because you're going to have the 5 stars up front. You're going to have the dudes, the big boys that are mauling down people, whether it's starters or not. They're missing a few pieces up front, but there's just it's so important to have that ability for both your defensive line and your linebackers to move forward.
Real talk, one more time on the pronunciation of his name, because I made an asshole move of saying I don't remember what man's names is and then criticize them, and that's like rule number 1. It's unprofessional, first of all. But what is man's name, first of all?
Princely Umamielen.
Princely Umamielen.
Yes.
Princely Umamielen. Yes. Princely, you're right, bro. You are right. Okay. Florida fans are right too. You don't need to be responding to me. Okay. I'm some washed up, and I wasn't even good. Right? I'm some analyst on Twitter. Don't be responding to me, dude. I'm not worth your time.
Yeah, man. So moving on, obviously, before we get into our predictions here for this contest, I wanted to do a little Saturday slate pick'em. All right. We're going to go through 5 games from this weekend, and it's college game day style. So we're just kind of rapidly get after them. And I've picked them at random. It's the games that I thought were going to be the best this weekend. So first of all, Duke and Louisville. Who do you got?
Is Riley Leonard playing?
I don't think so.
All right, give me Louisville.
All right, I got Louisville as well. I think with Riley Leonard not going, it's going to be difficult for them to get after. I think Louisville looked over
ACC Pitt. Mid, though. That's going to be some 18-14, brother.
I think Louisville's been fine this year. They overlooked Pitt, I believe, last week.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and lost that contest. But if they get Jamari Thrash involved, he's been a stud for them all year. He's one of my favorite players in college football.
Love it.
I think that they can kind of make some shake against a rather stout Blue Devils defense. But ultimately, I got Louisville in a close one. Oklahoma, Kansas.
I think Kansas is a 10.5-point dog at home in this football game. I love Lance Leipold just because, like, I love watching the offense. Some bitch out there running 2 quarterbacks in that offense every once in a while. Like, he just having fun. He's like, I know y'all ain't watching this. But watch this. I'm fit to do it. No, I think Oklahoma gets back right after a UCF football game. This, like, I don't care who the coach is. I don't care if it's Bobby Stoops. I don't care if it's the I can't cook Lincoln Riley. I don't care if it's I steal signals Brent Venables. I don't care who it is. Okay, Oklahoma stays on them 11 o'clock local kicks, getting their teeth kicked in by football teams they shouldn't be, spending all 4 quarters crawling back, all right, managing to find ways to squeak it out and win. And then the next week, they play another football team that they're much better than, and they kick the doors off of them. They're like, all right, we're good again, I promise. This looks like I'm good again, I promise football game for Oklahoma. Give me the Sooners.
What did you say that line was for this game?
I think it's like 10.5.
It should be more. Jalen Daniels is not playing. It's only Jason Bean.
Okay.
So I think Oklahoma responds after, like you said, that upset scare against UCF.
You're not Team Bean, huh?
Yeah. I just think Jalen Daniels is very talented. But Bean can grow into his own. I'm not going to hate on Bean, but I just think that defense creates pressure against Bean. And like you said, they just have a big bounce back. Dylan Gabriel leads that offense to a comfortable victory, or leads them offensively, and they're able to produce a comfortable victory over the Jayhawks. Utah and Oregon, we're heading out to the West, baby. Last year, the Pac-12, it's a high-octane offense versus a stingy defense in Utah.
Hey, that's the coach Florida fans ought to be talking about, Kyle Whittingham. Y'all can steal that dude from Utah, right? Anyways, enough of that. People are gonna be like, this Georgia beat reporter talked us up and then told us we weren't good enough to get Dan Lanning, and then he wants to love on Graham Mertz. What the hell's going on with this guy? Utah, Oregon. This is tough because, like, Utah is a football team that, like, never ever loses big. You know what I mean? Like, they're always in football games. They're going to be down to the wire in a football game. And here's what scares me. Every time Bo Nix is in one of those football games, he tends to lose them. But despite all of that, Oregon's still like, hey, life's on the line. Got to win out. Got to go to a national title here. And you have the team to do so, right? Bo Nix in his 17th year of college football. It's time to go get it done. Give me the Duckies. Give me the Ducks.
I'm with you. I think if this game was played in, like, with the same roster, everything in like 2007, I think Utah's winning it because there's been a flip where stingy defenses used to win football games. Now you're seeing the offenses take games. And it just seems as if that's the way of college football, especially in the regular season now in 2023. So I got Bo Nix and Oregon's offense kind of taking that step against the Utah team in that big matchup to come away with the win at home, even though Whittingham's going to have his boys ready. Like you said, they don't lose big in these contests, or really ever. But I just don't think they have enough firepower offensively to stay in it with the Ducks. And for me, this next one's tough, and I don't necessarily know why, and I'm sure you're going to be able to rattle it off. But we got Tennessee and Kentucky in Lexington. How do you see that game shaking out in a potential SEC East? Just like there's some not necessarily implications, but there is a lot on the line for both teams here throughout the rest of the year.
Here's a question for the chat and for those that are watching this still magically 51 minutes in.
Yeah, man.
Who do you think was more wrong? Who do you think the national media was more wrong about? This idea that Joe Milton and Devin Leary are good quarterbacks, or those people out here that were saying Graham Mertz is a bad quarterback? Because Graham Mertz has far outperformed the takes on him, and Joe Milton and Devin Leary have far underperformed the magical takes I saw this offseason on these two people. And I think what you're talking about and the unpredictability of this football game is the quarterback play. I mean, it is abysmal. It is really, really bad in terms of the up and down nature. Now, Joe Milton seems to be consistently on the uptick now. And what I will give him credit for is over the last, I'd say 4 or 5 weeks, he's managed to kind of put away the drastic, oh, you just stared down that guy and drew everybody over there, and that's why we threw that pick. Not because you just didn't see that guy. No, you were staring over there. That's why we gave up that interception. Those things have gone or have slowly started to decrease the amount of times those things happen. Now, Devin Leary is still playing horrible football. For that reason, I'm going to take Tennessee in this football game. And they got a great defense. By the way, you're down there from Florida, and I would be interested to hear your opinion on this. There is no way in hell you could have told me 3 years ago that Josh Heupel is going to be the head coach at the University of Tennessee, and he's going to be winning football games with rushing the football and playing defense. Are you shitting me? Hell no. That's not happening. Like, what?
Absolutely.
What world are we living in?
Yeah, they've figured it out, and that's crazy because those were the offensive line and defense have been Tennessee's kryptonite forever. But specifically against this, we're in this regime under Josh Heupel since he's gotten there. It's been like they should have a good passing attack, but are they going to be able to run the football with that offensive line? And is that defense going to be able to uphold? And it's just the narrative is completely flipped, and it's been crazy to watch them. I will say I want to come clean here. I did think Devin Leary would be significantly better at Kentucky than he was at NC State if he was healthy. Now we know this, that we have 585 subscribers. We're not popping on this channel yet. It's coming. It's 100% yet. One day I'm gonna have a nice mic like you and be in my stew. But anyways, I went on record in my SEC prediction show to say that I thought Joe Milton was not good at football. And it was simple. Like, I just thought that, yes, he has an arm that can throw it 110 yards. He can stretch the field if he wants to. But at the same time, what are you going to do about the balls that skip into the dirt off a slant or the 30-yard miss on a deep route? Like, I don't understand. I didn't understand the narrative going into the season. I was like, we've seen him before. He's been benched at 2 different schools, and we expected him to take some miraculous jump just because he sat behind Hendon Hooker for 2 years. And it was like, okay, sure, he might be a little progressed, but I feel like we know with what we're getting with him, and he's never really produced at a form that makes me say, oh, yeah, this guy is, Anthony Richardson 2.0, which terrible take, by the way. Anybody that compared him to Anthony Richardson, they are not the same, but it's just a significant, I had so much not great comments and people telling me that I was dumb.
It was wild because, like, he got so much hype for being the MVP of that bowl game.
Yeah.
Bro, go watch the tape on that bowl game.
Oh, I did.
Seriously look at it. And, like, quiet tape, silent tape too. And you're like, all right, well, the first 3 drives or the first 2 drives, they basically have to punt, I'm pretty sure, because he, like, turns down a wide open slant. He throws it through the freaking face mask of a running back that's like 5 feet from him. And then he misses a deep ball. And it's like, oh. And you're like, don't worry. All these things are going to get better next year, miraculously. And no, they haven't. But again, to his credit, he's at least, and from my sourcing up there in Tennessee, by the way, I know this isn't a Tennessee podcast and I know we're really long here, but to his credit and to his defense, that's an offense that is very the concepts are based on what the defense is giving us. So if I come off the line of scrimmage and they're giving us man, I'm going to continue to run. If I come off the line of scrimmage and they give us zone, I'm going to sit, right? A lot of these offenses are predicated off this, but this is really, really dependent upon this, all these option routes. It sounds like the wide receivers are playing just as bad as he is. So from what coaches are telling me out of that building. So there's that. But no, I like Tennessee in this football game because I like the running game and their ability to actually play defense a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm going to ride the wave with you there as well. I think Tennessee, just because of their rushing game, is going to be able to overpower Kentucky. And I just want to be frank. Every other game I have one of them bolded. I just left this one blank because I had no idea. So I just had decided right now that I'm taking Tennessee because Kentucky's just, I don't know. They are what they are.
Kentucky's Kentucky, dude. They haven't. I don't think Mark Stoops. I think Mark Stoops has 2 wins against SEC opponents with a winning record in his time at Kentucky. So yeah, that's Kentucky. If they're not beating South Carolina, Vanderbilt, or a really bad Missouri team, they're not beating them. That's kind of their SEC bio.
They roll through Florida like it's freaking Swiss cheese every year.
Shit through a tin horn.
All right, last game. This one will be fast. Old Dominion versus James Madison. All right, big fan of the Dons here on this program. They're 7-0, making their presence felt in the Sun Belt, despite newly moving to Division I. They are electric. You watch any James Madison this year?
No, but I know all about JMU football. Don't worry about me. I'm an FCS guy by heart, by nature. Okay, I get it.
Hey, there's that's some fun football. That's a good product. You gotta watch the Dons. All right. So I say this train keeps on rolling, and the Dons move to 8-0 and continue their just dominant season against Old Dominion.
Ooh, little JMU ODU. I don't know, man.
Sir.
What is the Old Dominion mascot? What is the Old Dominion mascot? Do we even know?
Hold on, I got you.
Is it a minor? Is it a paladin?
No, I don't think it's a minor. It's like a dog of some sort.
It is a dog.
It's like that dog.
Okay. That's a dog that kind of looks like a lion.
It's like it's a lion.
That's definitely a lion.
Yeah,
they're the monarchs, but their animal is a lion. All right, hey, here's the deal. Give me them daggone monarchs. They're gonna roll on the road at JMU, just absolutely shitting on a 7-0 record. Give me the monarchs. All right, I don't know nothing about ODU JMU.
Dude, I know. Hey, I just had to. This is the first time I've gotten to talk about James Madison, and I'm in a group chat where every time James Madison is playing, we are locked in. The boys are locked on James Madison because they play some good football.
That's almost as crazy as having a 600-page documentary about how you're going to save Michigan football and calling it the fucking manifesto.
Oh, yeah, man. All right, Florida, Georgia predictions. Who do you got in that contest? Obviously, we know who you got, but how do you see it happening moving forward, just in that game?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick to my 35-20 prediction. Here's the thing: this offense over the last couple of years has absolutely destroyed cover 3 playing football teams. The last 2 football teams, in my recollection, that were dominant, like preeminent cover 3. This is what we do. We're gonna stick in it no matter what. Type football teams. One of them was Kentucky. They scored 53 points. The other one was TCU. They scored 62 points. This football team destroys. This offense particularly destroys Florida or cover 3 football teams. I don't think it's going to be that bad in this football game. However, I think it's going to be like a 35-20 type football game. I think Georgia covers, but closely in this one.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I'm actually just 1 point below you. I got 34-20 in favor of Georgia. I think that Florida can start hot against this team. We've seen teams start hot against Georgia, even though I do think they'll be ready to go. I actually have Florida scoring first on just a field goal on the opening drive, but after that, I think it gets to kind of flip in Georgia's direction. And while Florida keeps it close, like I said earlier, for about 3 quarters, Georgia pulls away late and finishes this one as a 2-touchdown victor. So Georgia 34-20 in Jacksonville, Florida. Florida's just not there yet from a talent perspective. Brooks, I know we've went just way too long, but I appreciated it. I appreciate you coming to hang on the show and just for everything you've done to make this thing happen and just giving the idea and helping me run with it. So appreciate you for everything. Appreciate you for coming on. And yeah, it's been a good time.
No doubt, brother. Keep balling.
Yes, sir. So make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're still watching. And if you are, thank you. Like y'all are some real ones.
Make them comment something specific. I told people an hour and 5 minutes into a video the other day to Instagram direct message me the word boogers. I found out who the real ones were.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, honestly, you might.
Hey, if y'all are watching this right now, all right, y'all are watching this, freaking DM me on Twitter. Golly, I got to come up with a word. Freaking Beyond.
There you go.
DM me Beyond on Twitter. All right. I'm going to turn off the little thingy where I can't get DMs unless someone's verified. We're going to go with Beyond. All right. So y'all tap in with your boy. I'll catch y'all on Monday for a little recap of this Florida Georgia contest in Jacksonville. I'm Brandon Carroll. Happy to have Brooke Austin here on the show. I'll catch y'all on Monday. We out.